Have you ever lain awake at 3 in the morning, not because of a noise outside, but because of the relentless clamor inside your own mind? It's a chaotic symphony of unfinished tasks, conversations left hanging, vague anxieties about the future, and perhaps most exhausting of all, the endless comparisons with a world that seems forever more perfect than we are through the lens of social media. We are living in a world that never stops moving, and our minds are pulled into that same spin. We chase something we call happiness, a goal that always seems just ahead, yet forever out of reach. We tell ourselves that if we could just add a little more, one more achievement, a little more recognition, one more expensive thing, we'd finally grasp it. But the finish line keeps drifting farther away, and we grow more exhausted on a journey with no clear destination. Have we been looking in the wrong place? Maybe the answer isn't trying to think positive harder, not in the hollow cheerleading of a culture of toxic positivity that asks us to ignore our very real pain. Is there another path, one that demands depth and truth, an ancient wisdom long forgotten that can help us truly grow calm? Imagine a mind steady like a mountain, unmoved by life's storms. That isn't a far-off dream. It's a real possibility, an art of inner mastery waiting for us to discover. The path we just mentioned, the ancient art of inner steadiness, is Stoicism. Today, we won't explore Stoicism as a dry history lecture, but as an essential, astonishingly powerful toolkit for surviving and thriving in the modern world. This is a pragmatic system of thought, one that doesn't fixate on changing the unchangeable events outside, but on mastering the only fortress we truly control, our mind, our judgments, and our responses. And perhaps no figure embodies this philosophy more vividly and tragically than one of its most famous practitioners, the philosopher-emperor Marcus Aurelius. We need to understand this man's context clearly. Marcus Aurelius was not a recluse scholar writing in the quiet of an ivory tower. He was the most powerful man on earth, ruling the Roman Empire at the very moment it was besieged on every front. Imagine the weight on his shoulders, endless wars on the northern frontier, a devastating pandemic, the Antonine Plague, that claimed the lives of millions, and, perhaps most painfully, betrayal by the very generals he trusted most. In that extreme chaos, when the empire was trembling, when death and loss were daily realities, what did he do to keep his reason intact, to avoid collapsing into despair? He wrote, not for publication, not for others to read, but for himself, often at night, in a cold military tent on the front lines. That personal journal, later known to us as Meditations, is one of the greatest texts ever written on the art of living. It is the brutally honest self-dialogue of a soul striving to cultivate serenity, compassion, and resilience in the face of unimaginable adversity. Why does the story of a Roman emperor from nearly 2 millennia ago feel so pertinent to us today? Because even though the circumstances have changed, human nature and our core challenges remain the same. We may no longer be fighting tribes on the Danube frontier, but we are battling information overload, economic pressure, an uncertain future, and a pandemic of anxiety. The central message of Marcus Aurelius and of Stoicism as a whole echoes through our age with astonishing force. Never stake your happiness on things beyond your control. Do not anchor your inner peace to other people's opinions, to social status, or to outcomes you cannot determine. In today's video, we will analyze the core principles that helped Marcus Aurelius find calm in the storm. We'll explore the foundational concept of the dichotomy of control, perhaps the most liberating idea in all of philosophy. We'll learn how to build unbreakable mental strength and discover how you can start applying this age-old wisdom immediately to reclaim sovereignty over your mind and live a life on purpose. So, what is the philosophical foundation, the core mental tool that kept the philosopher-emperor Marcus Aurelius standing firm in the eye of the storm? It is the very first principle and the foundation of all practical Stoicism, the dichotomy of control. At first glance, it sounds simple, but truly understanding it and living by it is a revolution in perception. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus, who deeply influenced Marcus Aurelius, distilled it with crystal clarity. This world, and all of our experiences within it, can be divided into two distinct categories. The first category is the things entirely outside our control. This list, surprisingly, includes almost everything we usually worry about. We don't control the weather. We don't control the economy. We don't control the flow of traffic on the road. We cannot absolutely control our own health. Illness and accidents can strike despite our best efforts. And most importantly, we absolutely do not control other people. We do not control their actions, their words, their emotions, and certainly not their opinions of us. We do not control our reputation, because it lives in other people's minds. We can give our very best effort, and yet we still do not control the final outcome of that effort. And this, my friends, is the root of nearly all human suffering, anxiety, and disappointment. We suffer because we anchor our inner peace to things that are fragile by nature and out of our hands. We get angry when someone doesn't behave the way we want. We feel crushed when a project fails, despite doing our best. We lose sleep over what others think of us, essentially. We're trying to command waves in the open ocean, and we burn out when they don't obey. Then comes the second category, the things entirely within our control. This list is frighteningly short, but it holds 100% of our power. So what do we control? We control our thoughts. We control the judgments we assign to external events. We control our choices, the intentions behind our actions, and our conscious responses to what happens. Happiness and tranquility, according to the Stoics, don't come from changing the outside world. Happiness comes from tending the garden within. It comes from realizing that an external event, for example being reprimanded by your boss, is not, in itself, good or bad. It's just an event. It is our judgment. This is terrible. I'm a failure, and he's so unfair, that creates the suffering. And that judgment entirely lies within our control. As Epictetus wrote, it's not things that upset us, but our judgments about things. And this is where we must clear up a damaging misconception about Stoicism, one tied to the phrase, care less wisely. Many people think practicing the dichotomy of control means becoming numb, cold, standing on the sidelines. That is a distortion. Stoicism does not teach us not to care. It teaches us to care effectively and healthily. Caring less is not apathy. It is detachment from clinging. A practitioner of Stoicism cares deeply about their actions, but releases attachment to outcomes. Picture a Stoic archer. He pours all his mind, training, and focus into what he controls: his breath, his stance, the tension of the bowstring, the moment of release. That is his control zone. But once the arrow leaves the string, it is no longer his. A sudden gust of wind, a slight movement of the target, those are outside his control. The Stoic archer accepts whatever result comes with calm, because he knows he did the best with what was his to command. This is liberation. It allows us to act boldly and courageously without being paralyzed by fear of failure or haunted by others' judgments. It is the foundation for building mental strength. We stop wasting our precious energy ramming against immovable walls, and instead channel all our power into building our inner fortress, a place no external event, no venomous word can reach. To bring this principle to life, we don't need to look at ancient Roman battlefields. We only need to look at the battlefield sitting in the palm of our hand, the smartphone. Consider our modern context, a perfectly engineered arena for breaking the dichotomy of control. That is the world of social media and consumerism. In a moment of fatigue or boredom, we open an app. Instantly, we're submerged in a never-ending torrent of carefully curated images: a former friend's luxury vacation, a coworker's promotion, a stranger's perfect physique, a relationship that appears ideal. These are things entirely outside our control. But what does our untrained mind do? It immediately violates the core principle. We take those external factors and allow them to dictate our inner worth. A toxic loop of comparison starts to spin. We look at their display and feel lacking. We see their success and feel like failures. Anxiety surges. And what is our instinctive response? We try to claw back control by playing the very same game. We try to control what cannot be controlled, other people's judgments. We begin to display, too. We post our most flattering photos, exaggerate our accomplishments, and then we sit there, eyes glued to the screen, anxiously waiting for likes and comments, external metrics, to validate our value. We've turned ourselves into servants of public approval. Consumerism runs on the same loop. It promises that inner peace, happiness, can be purchased. It tells us that if we had that car, that outfit, that house, we would finally feel enough. But this is a harmful confusion between the internal and the external. The pleasure of a new possession is real, but it's shallow and short-lived. It cannot fill the emptiness within, because that emptiness is not a lack of material goods, it's a lack of meaning and inner value. So how would a practitioner of Stoicism move through this world? They don't necessarily delete social media or live ascetically in the woods. Instead, they consciously shift the center of gravity. As they scroll past those images, they remind themselves, these are externals. They have nothing to do with my dignity. Their happiness does not subtract from mine. Rather than performing to control others' opinions, they focus on what they can control, their integrity. They ask themselves, did I live by my values today? Was I kind to my family? Did I give my sinned effort at work? Was I honest with myself? This shift is a quiet revolution. It moves the seat of power from the amorphous crowd outside back to the inner fortress within. You still live in the world, still participate, still strive, but you no longer cling to outcomes or applause. You find peace in the very act done with virtue, not in the reward that act may or may not bring. This is the first step toward reclaiming true freedom. If the dichotomy of control is the shield that protects us from external forces, then the second core principle is the sword. It's not merely defensive, it's a proactive art of transformation. This is the process of building mental strength, or, more precisely, the art of reframing adversity. We often think of mental strength as the ability to endure or withstand, to take a punch and remain standing. But for Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics, it runs far deeper. It is not about gritting your teeth through pain. It's the ability to absorb the energy of that punch and convert it into fuel to move forward. The foundation of this strength is found once again in meditations. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself with a line that is both liberating and formidable. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The strength he speaks of is mental strength. This strength doesn't come from praying for external events to change, but from recognizing a basic truth. No external event, no matter how terrible, a criticism, a failure, a loss, can harm us on its own. Only our judgment, our interpretation of that event, has the power to make us suffer. When we truly grasp this, we discover an oasis of calm even in the storm. We realize that our mind is an impregnable fortress, unless we ourselves open the gates to the enemy. But Stoicism does not stop at passive defense. It goes a step further, a brilliant step, to redefine the very nature of obstacles. And here is perhaps Marcus Aurelius's most famous and powerful statement, a sentence that distills his entire philosophy of action. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Read that again, and let it sink in. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is the mechanism of reframing. It means that whatever hinders you, your procrastination, others' criticism, a failed project, a physical limitation, is not the end of the road. It is the new road. An obstacle is not what prevents us from practicing virtue. It is the very opportunity to practice it. If you're stuck in traffic, that is a chance to practice patience. If you are treated unfairly, that is a chance to practice forgiveness and uphold your dignity. If you face a difficult task, that is a chance to practice courage. Mental strength, therefore, is built upon three practical pillars. First is accepting reality. You cannot reframe something you refuse to see. You must acknowledge the truth plainly, without judgment. It's raining. The project failed. Those words were spoken. Only by accepting reality can you begin to work with it. Second is learning from criticism. When someone criticizes you, the natural response is defensiveness or anger. But the Stoic treats criticism as an external event. They reframe it into data. They ask, is there even 1% truth here that could help me? If yes, they feel grateful for a free lesson to improve themselves. If not, they recognize it as merely someone else's mistaken opinion and let it go lightly. And finally, the outcome of this process is the ability to move forward without bitterness. Bitterness arises from the feeling that life has treated you unfairly. But when you view every obstacle as a custom-designed training exercise for your growth, the concept of unfairness dissolves. You are no longer a victim of circumstance. You are a student in the great school of life. You advance, not in spite of adversity, but precisely because of it. Does the theory of turning obstacles into the path truly hold up against the most brutal adversities life can throw at us? Or is it merely a mental exercise for the small inconveniences of everyday life? To answer that, we need to step away from the safety of the modern world and look to one of the most resilient demonstrations of Stoicism in the 20th century, the story of Admiral James Stockdale. In 1965, Stockdale's plane was shot down over the skies of Vietnam. He ejected, broke a leg, and was immediately captured as a prisoner of war. He had no idea he was about to spend the next 7.5 years in Hoa Lo prison, a place where torture, solitary confinement, and despair filled the air each day. This was a context in which every external factor lay beyond control. Stockdale couldn't control when he would eat, whether he would be tortured the next day, or whether he would ever see his family again. He was entirely deprived of physical freedom. If there is such a thing as an absolute obstacle, this was it. So what did Stockdale do? A student of Epictetus, he applied Stoicism to the fullest. First, he practiced the dichotomy of control. He accepted a brutal truth. He could not change the fact that he was a prisoner. He could not change the actions of his captors. But he could exercise absolute control over his response to them. He could control his thoughts. He could control his dignity. Second, he reframed his entire experience. Instead of seeing himself as a victim, he regarded himself as a commanding officer on the front line. Only the battlefield had shifted from the sky to the cell. The obstacle became his way. He secretly established a communication system and a code of conduct for other prisoners, helping them withstand psychological torture and keep their spirits intact. Stockdale accepted reality with ruthless clarity. He rejected blind optimism, what later came to be called the Stockdale paradox. He said that the Pollyannas, those who always believed we'll be out by Christmas, were the first to break when Christmas came and went with nothing changed. Instead, he accepted the dark truth of the situation while holding an unshakable belief that he would prevail in the end. Stockdale used the suffering itself as a training tool. He led with composure. He guarded his dignity as his final fortress. By concentrating on the only domain of control left to him, his inner life, his choices, his virtue, James Stockdale transformed 7.5 years of earthly hell into a shining testament to the power of the human spirit. His story proves that Stoicism is not an escape from reality. It is the most powerful tool we have for facing reality, no matter how terrible, and turning that very reality into a forge for character. We've talked about the shield, the dichotomy of control, to protect the mind, and the sword, reframing, to turn adversity into the path forward. But Stoicism would be meaningless if it only worked when we're alone. How does this philosophy operate in the most complex, chaotic, and beautiful realm of life, human relationships? This is where we explore the third core principle, the art of loving and connecting without losing inner self-mastery. Many people assume that a Stoic, with an emphasis on the inner life and accepting reality, must be cold, distant, incapable of deep love. This is a profound misunderstanding. Stoics are not against love. They are against slavery in love. They reject the clinging, demanding kind of love that treats another person as the source of one's happiness. Remember the foundational principle: your happiness, your peace, can only come from what is within your control, your thoughts and your actions. The moment you say, "I can't live without that person," or "My happiness depends on whether that person loves me," you have handed the keys to your inner fortress to someone else. You have placed your peace in something completely outside your control. Love, from the Stoic point of view, is therefore a conscious act. It is a choice. You choose to love someone for their good qualities. You choose to care, to support, and to treat them kindly, because those are actions within your control and aligned with your virtue. You love fully, and at the same time you practice emotional non-attachment. You clearly recognize that the other person is an independent individual. They can change. They can leave. They can die. You love them, but you do not let your self-worth depend on their response. Whether they return your love or not, whether they recognize your sacrifice or not, that does not change the value of your own loving actions. You do it because it is right, not to get something in return. Paradoxically, this very non-attachment enables a deeper, freer love. You no longer love under the fear of loss. You no longer try to control or manipulate someone to keep them. You are simply present. You cherish them as a borrowed gift from life, and you focus on becoming the best partner, friend, father, or mother you can be. This principle also extends to one of the greatest challenges in relationships: forgiveness and dealing with enemies. Our natural reaction when hurt is to seek revenge, to want the one who harmed us to suffer in kind. But Marcus Aurelius saw the self-destruction in that impulse. He wrote himself an immortal reminder: the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Reflect on the depth of that line. When you seek revenge, you allow your enemy's actions to shape your own. You lower yourself to their standard. You let hatred and external influence invade and control your inner fortress. You become a copy of what you despise. The noblest revenge, in Marcus's view, is to refuse to be transformed. It is to hold fast to your virtue. It is to continue living with compassion, integrity, and reason, no matter how poorly others behave. This is not weakness. It is the pinnacle of mental strength. It declares, "Your actions have no power to change who I am. I refuse to play your game." In this way, you not only protect your inner peace, you also win the ultimate victory, the triumph of reason over chaos. So, how do we apply a philosophy that seems this strict to the tangled, emotion-heavy mess of real life? How do we love without clinging when our hearts seem programmed to do the opposite? Let's start with a scenario that's incredibly common in the modern world: anxiety in a relationship. You send a message to someone you care about and hours pass with no reply. What's the mind's default reaction? It begins an inner interrogation. They're ignoring me. They don't care anymore. What did I say wrong? In an instant, your inner peace, your self-worth, has been hung on the thin thread of an external response, something completely outside your control. You've unintentionally become emotionally dependent. A practitioner of Stoicism feels that silence too. But they pause before the judgment begins. They apply the dichotomy of control. They tell themselves, Whether they reply or not is outside my control. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they need space. But my response is within my control. Instead of firing off an angry or sulking follow-up, desperate attempts to control the external, they choose to act from inner virtue. They choose trust over suspicion, patience over anxiety. They may decide that the loving action now is to respect the other person's space, and most importantly, they return to their fortress. They read a book, they work, they take a walk. They do not allow the external silence to fracture the inner calm. This isn't coldness, this is strength. It's a steady, present attitude, a declaration that I'm here for you, but my integrity does not depend on you. Now let's look at a thornier example, betrayal, and the line, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Imagine a coworker at the office plays dirty. They steal your idea or badmouth you behind your back to grab a promotion. The initial shock is anger and a deep sense of hurt. Your instinct screams for payback. Your mind spins 100 plots to bring them down, expose their true colors, make them pay. But the Stoic stops and asks, what will I gain if you spend your energy scheming revenge? What are you doing? You're letting your enemy's actions take over your mind entirely. You're letting their toxicity seep into you. You're wasting your precious time, focus, and mental energy, the only things you truly control, on someone unworthy of it. By trying to get revenge, you've become just like them, someone obsessed with harming others. Instead, you choose the higher road. The best revenge is not to become like them. You choose to reframe this event. Their betrayal is your opportunity to practice your virtues. What do you control? Your work, your integrity, how you treat other colleagues. You keep doing excellent work. You keep building relationships based on trust. You let your results and your dignity speak for themselves. Your composure and integrity, in the face of their pettiness, is the most powerful revenge of all. It shows they have no power over you. Your dignity is inviolable. In this way, you not only protect your soul, you turn their attack into an opportunity to further fortify your own character. We've come a long way. We've stood amid the chaos of war and plague, alongside the philosopher-emperor Marcus Aurelius. We've felt the trap of comparison in today's social media world. We've witnessed the extraordinary mental strength of James Stockdale in a dark prison. And we've explored how to keep our dignity even when facing an enemy. We've understood why Stoicism is such an important philosophy. We've grasped its core, the dichotomy of control, turning adversity into the path, and loving without clinging. But philosophy becomes meaningless if it stops at theory. Philosophy, especially Stoicism, is not something to admire in a museum. It's a tool to be used, a weapon to be sharpened, a daily medicine to be taken. So how do we weave these great principles into our busy, pressured, and often directionless lives? How do we begin building that inner fortress, one brick at a time? This is where we move from philosophy to practice. This is the application roadmap. 4 core exercises distilled from the Stoic masters, designed to train your mind the way you train your body. Exercise 1. The map. Practicing the dichotomy of control. We've talked a lot about the dichotomy of control, but knowing it and living it are two entirely different things. Our minds, shaped by thousands of years of evolution, are used to worrying about everything, especially the things we cannot change. This exercise is designed to break that toxic habit. Next time you feel a wave of anxiety rising, before an important meeting, after an argument with a loved one, or when a frightening headline appears, stop. Take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. On one side, write, "Things outside my control." On the other side, write, "Things entirely within my control." Now, be honest and list them. Take that important meeting as an example. In the outside my control column, you might write your boss's mood, whether the client will agree, whether the tech will glitch, whether coworkers will back you up, and the final outcome of the meeting. Now, look at the within my control column. What can you write there? You control the time you spend preparing, the quality of your presentation, the thoroughness of your research. You control whether you rehearse beforehand. You control your outfit, your composure. You control arriving 5 minutes early. You control taking a deep breath before you begin. And most importantly, you control your attitude if things don't go your way. Do you see what's happening? This is an act of liberation. You have just formally granted yourself permission to stop wasting 90% of your mental energy on the left column, the column of the impossible. And you can focus 100% of your energy on the right column, the column of action. This is not resignation. It is strategic focus. You stop trying to command the storm and instead pour yourself into steering your ship with excellence. Exercise 2. The Mirror. Stoic Journaling. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is not a book. It is a journal. It's proof of the second essential exercise. This is not a place to record what you ate or where you went. It is an ethical laboratory, a mirror to face yourself each day. This practice is best split into 2 parts, morning and evening. In the morning, it's preparation for the day. Marcus often reminded himself of the difficult people he was about to face. Today, I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. This isn't pessimism, it's mental inoculation. By anticipating challenges, he primed himself to meet them with reason and virtue, rather than being blindsided and reacting emotionally. You can ask yourself, what challenges might I face today? Who do I want to be when I meet them? But the most important part happens in the evening. This is your philosophical audit. The philosopher Seneca was famous for questioning himself nightly before sleep. You can ask 3 simple questions. What did I do wrong today? Where did I let a faulty judgment take over? Where did I react impulsively? What did I do right today? Where did I practice patience? Where did I show courage or kindness? What can I improve tomorrow? What opportunities did I miss to become better? This is an exercise in radical self-awareness. You become the observer of your own mind. You begin to notice your patterns. You celebrate small wins and learn from failures without harsh self-condemnation. Slowly, day by day, you separate yourself from automatic reactions and create space to make conscious choices. Exercise 3. The Antidote. Negative Visualization. In a culture obsessed with positive thinking, this exercise can sound shocking. It's premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. It's one of the Stoics' most powerful tools, and it serves two main purposes. The first purpose is preparation. Just as James Stockdale continuously visualized being tortured, we can mentally ready ourselves for smaller hardships. You don't do this to wallow in anxiety. You do it rationally. You ask, what could happen? I could lose my job. I could get sick. This relationship could end. Then you keep asking, if that happens, how will I respond? What concrete steps will I take? What inner sources of strength will I draw upon? By rehearsing catastrophe in your mind, you strip it of its greatest weapon, surprise. Panic, more than the event itself, is often what destroys us. Negative visualization builds a response plan for your mind. So when hardship strikes, you can say, I anticipated this. I know what to do. The second purpose, and perhaps the more beautiful one, is gratitude. This is the strongest antidote to hedonic adaptation, the psychological phenomenon that makes us quickly get used to what we have and crave more. This exercise asks you to spend a moment each day imagining the loss of what you cherish. When you're eating dinner with your family, take a second to picture that chair being empty. When you're at work, imagine that tomorrow you no longer have this place to go. When you consider your health, imagine how fragile it truly is. The goal is not to become morbid, but to wake you from ingratitude. It forces you to recognize that everything you love is temporary, on loan, and the result is miraculous. A glass of water suddenly tastes sweet. An ordinary conversation with someone you love becomes priceless. The present becomes vivid and radiant. You learn to love everything without clinging, to treasure it deeply now, because you know it will not be there forever. Exercise 4. The vaccine, voluntary discomfort. This is the physical counterpart to negative visualization. If the previous exercise trains the mind, this one trains the body and the will. We live in the most comfortable era in human history, and it has made us soft. We fear the smallest inconveniences, a little hunger, a little cold, a little boredom. Voluntary discomfort is a deliberate vaccine against that softness. Ancient Stoics, like Seneca, practiced this regularly. He would spend a few days eating only bread and drinking plain water, or sleeping on a hard floor, or wearing thin clothing in cold weather. Why? For two reasons. First, to build resilience. You prove to yourself that you can endure. When you willingly take a cold shower, you teach your nervous system, this is uncomfortable, but it won't kill me. I can get through it. By injecting small, controlled doses of discomfort, you build tolerance for the larger, uncontrollable hardships life will inevitably throw your way. Second, to reset gratitude. After a night on the floor, your regular bed feels like a luxurious cloud. After a day of fasting, the simplest meal tastes like a royal feast. You break the loop of hedonic adaptation. You learn to find joy in the basics instead of endlessly chasing new stimulation. You can start small. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Skip a meal, turn off the AC, or leave your phone at home on a walk. Each small act is a declaration. I am stronger than my comforts. These 4 exercises, the map, the mirror, the antidote, and the vaccine, are not standalone tips. They form a complete system. The dichotomy of control teaches you where to focus your energy. Journaling teaches you how you're doing it, building self-awareness. Negative visualization teaches you to cherish what you have and prepare for loss. Voluntary discomfort proves to you that you can survive loss. This is the roadmap, my friends. This is the path to inner self-mastery. It requires work. It requires honesty. It requires courage. But the result is something priceless, a durable peace. Not a peace that depends on the outside world being perfect, but a resilient peace that thrives in spite of life's inevitable chaos. Of course, the path we've just mapped, the path of inner self-mastery, is not an easy journey, and Stoicism itself is not immune to deep challenges and criticisms. One of the most common and persistent arguments is that pursuing this philosophy risks leading to numbness, a cold suppression of emotion. Critics worry that by constantly practicing the dichotomy of control and detaching ourselves from external outcomes, we turn ourselves into rocks. They ask, does the pursuit of absolute tranquility mean we're losing compassion, empathy, and the capacity to feel deep joy or authentic sorrow, the very things that make us human? Another serious challenge is social in nature. Does Stoicism lead to passive resignation? If we accept everything external as it is, especially injustice or oppression, what will drive us to stand up and fight to change the world? Does this philosophy encourage a dangerous indifference, causing individuals to focus only on their inner garden, while the outside world is on fire? These are legitimate questions that force us to acknowledge that Stoicism, if misunderstood or applied in an extreme way, can become a subtle form of avoidance. It demands a delicate balance: how to accept reality without becoming passive, and how to master emotion without becoming emotionless. And if you're not yet part of our community, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell right now. Don't miss any of the next journeys into the mind, friends.